Welcome to Connected, episode 268. It is made possible this week by our sponsors, Moo, FreshBooks, Hover, and Away. My name is Mary Hackett, and I am joined by Federico Viticci.
Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hello. I'm quite well. Thank you.
So we need to address this up front. We finally got rid of your husband on the show, Stephen. So after much deliberation, Mike and I discussed it is time for Stephen to pursue his true passion, collecting old Macs, and therefore you will be replacing Stephen, Mary. I'm very excited about this. We had a topic in mind. I know that you have a lot of opinions and thoughts about headphones and specifically earbuds. I'm guessing for working out and listening to music. So I kind of wanted to kick things off with this topic. So Stephen mentioned a while back before being fired from the show that you bought the new Power Beats Pro. I guess that's the name.
Yes.
So tell me. And I have a lot of questions for you because my girlfriend Sylvia also bought these earbuds. Okay. I have a lot of questions. So tell me how your experience with these ones went.
Sure. So I should preface all this by saying I don't like to buy new things. I like to get one thing that works. And if it works well, I don't want to change it ever. So I branched out. Stephen encouraged me because my Beats X kept dying. I was on my third pair. So we branched out and tried the new ones, the Power Beats Pro. And I was very hesitant because for several reasons. The first of which being it takes up a lot of space in my bag. And I also always have a water bottle in there in my wallet and usually some things that belong to some number of children, and my field notes and my phone and, whatever else I travel with every day. So I wanted something, in the my Beats X, their little carrying pack is fairly flat and I can just fit it in a little pocket. The Power Beats Pro is a lot bulkier.
Yes.
I like the way that it opens. It's really loud, though. Like it can't really do it conspicuously. When it opens and closes, it's loud. And it's very slick. So if I drop it, if I'm like trying to do something in the kitchen or like my hands are wet and I drop it, it automatically pops open and there go the earpods out into the floor. So that's kind of annoying. But as far as actual sound quality, I really like them. They fit really well. And that's because besides like going into your ear pretty securely, it also wraps around the back of your like earlobe all the way around the top and the back. And that really bothered me at first, but once you get used to feeling it all around on the side of your heads, I think it helps with the seal a lot.
These are the ones that they have the in-ear rubber or silicone tips, right?
Yes, they do.
And you can, I guess they come in multiple sizes in the box. You can swap them.
Yes.
Okay. So the main problem that we have, that Sylvia has, basically what you just mentioned. So she can never use any kind of in-ear earbuds because after a few minutes, she says she starts getting a headache.
Oh.
Yeah, she thought that these ones were going to be better. She used to have the old Power Beats, not the Pro, not the wireless ones, when they still had a cable running, around the back of your neck, essentially. Basically, after a few minutes of usage, she starts getting a headache at the sides of her head. And also, she complained about the ear hooks that wrap around your ears. She was also getting a headache there. So she keeps saying that, and I even let her try the new AirPods Pro they also have the silicone tips. Same problem. So she keeps saying that the best earbuds for her are the standard traditional non-pro AirPods, the original ones.
Yeah.
Have you ever had any? So you mentioned you got used to the feel of the silicone tips and the ear hook of the Power Beats.
Yeah.
So you didn't have any of these issues. You just got used to them.
I didn't, but if Stephen were here, if he still had, the position that I have now taken over, he would agree with Sylvia that he just can't stand, and maybe it's just like anatomical, like it has to do with the shape of your ear, because he can't stand either one of these that I have been going back and forth with, the AirPods Pro and the Power Beats Pro. both of those bother his ear, but he loves the original AirPods. But I don't like them because they don't stay in, and I don't like that they don't form to the shape of your ear.
Interesting. So the AirPods do not stay in for you.
No, I mean I can make it work, but if you're moving around and like working out, I just felt like they were always slipping out, and that made me really nervous because I didn't want to lose one.
So with the Power Beats Pro, what types of workouts do you usually do?
Everything from just like working on a machine, or I might be doing yoga where I'm upside down, doing handstands, turning your head to the side, doing different twists. And that's where I notice I'm having trouble even still with the AirPods Pro. I've tried both size tips, and my ear seems to be right in between the two sizes that they give, because the smaller size will slip out, and the medium size don't seem to help much either. I feel like I can't. It's fine for sound, but if I'm going to be in an awkward position, meaning like my head is to the side and my ears, parallel with the ground, gravity's going to take over and I lose it.
Have you noticed any differences between the Power Beats Pro and the AirPods Pro in terms of the pressure of the silicone tips? Because Apple mentioned that the AirPods Pro have this new vent system that sort of, it's meant to relieve pressure from your inner ear. They're using better air circulation essentially in these little tiny buds that they have. So in theory they should be helping with not making you feel that feeling of pressure that you get with the
like
silicone tip.
Have you noticed in your ear? Yeah.
Yes. Have you noticed any differences between the Power Beats and the AirPods as far as the
Yes, and I did not realize that must be what it is. I just thought that the Power Beats Pro were just, I can't really think of another word other than invasive. Like when you put it in, you really have to, because you have to twist it. It's kind of a pain to get them in. You have to twist it all the way around your ear and then make sure that it's in. And it does feel like it's just all the way in there. Like I can hear nothing else but my music, which is what you want. But but it does. Yeah, you can feel, like you said, that's a little bit of pressure. It doesn't cause headaches or any trouble for me. But yeah, that does make the AirPods Pro a little more comfortable, I guess, in that respect.
And what about listening to music? Any sound differences you've noticed between the two?
Yes. So I really wanted the AirPods are so fancy. The AirPods Pro, I wanted them to be the best, but they just aren't. The Power Beats Pro, like I can hear so much more bass. Like there's a song that I keep listening to kind of on repeat right now. And they have one of their versions of the song is with the marching band. And I listened to the song last night with the Power Beats Pro and then with the AirPods Pro. And it was so much better on the Power Beats Pro, just because I felt like the drum line was in front of me. It felt like I was on a football field. And then the AirPods Pro just sounds so tinny and it almost hurts your ears. Like I couldn't get the music as loud because it was just too much treble and there wasn't enough bass to balance it out.
Yeah. A lot of people don't like the Beats sound. I do. I think it's fun, to have a little more bass and the drums are a little more prominent. I've always thought it was fun.
I want to feel like I'm there.
Yeah, but a lot of people, these audiophiles, these people, folks who care about the purity of the sound and all that stuff, which I totally understand.
Sure,
but they don't
what are you using them for? It depends on what's best for you.
So next question would be touch controls. So the new AirPods, you gotta press on the little stem if you wanna play, pause, and trigger noise cancellation. But the Power Beats, they have the little plastic thing by the side of your ear, right? And they have button. Physical with the buttons. So what's the difference like for you?
So on the AirPods Pro, the stem, it's just difficult to get to because the stem is shorter. It's difficult for me to I feel like I have to really work to get my fingers around it, to push pause, to call for Siri. On the Power Beats Pro, and they're, unless I'm just missing it, y'all correct me, I can't find volume control. There's not volume control on the AirPods Pro.
Yeah, right? there's no volume control.
Drives me nuts. Drives me crazy. And on the Power Beats Pro, it's the button on the top. So there's like a round button where the B is, and then there's another button up on top a little bit. And that one you can easily do volume up, volume down. So on button control, I prefer the Power Beats Pro.
Yeah, volume control has always been the one feature that a lot of people have wanted from the AirPods. I really struggle to imagine how they could do it though, because there's no room for buttons on the AirPods unless they were super tiny buttons that you need to press. And you could probably, with the old ones, with the old AirPods, with the longer stem, you could probably make the argument that, was a longer stem, therefore maybe Apple could have explored the idea of sort of swiping across the stem, sort of like a slider to adjust volume. But now that it's even shorter on the AirPods Pro, I really don't know. You're going to be swiping a finger on your ear, essentially. Like, that's not going to work.
Yeah, really the only spot to be, because they've got, is that the vent, the black bit?
Yeah.
That's toward the top? Okay, so that they couldn't do anything there. But like right below it, I feel like you could have like a tiny little slider where you could easily just zoop.
Yeah, otherwise you got to change the volume. I mean, if you have an Apple Watch,
use your watch, yeah, but you got to like stop stop your workout and figure out where it is. And
yeah, it's not ideal. So, so after the Beats X, between the Power Beats Pro and the AirPods Pro, what's your pick?
I really like the Beats X best. If they just would not break, if they just worked, they would be my favorite.
How many pairs did you get for the Beats X?
I've been through 3.
Oh my God.
The first one was faulty, just kind of DOA. So we sent those back, they replaced them. And then those didn't last very long. And I think with that second pair, I think the buttons failed, or it like something with the syncing in the button. They still worked as headphones, but nothing else worked easily. And then the third pair, the buttons died, so I just had to get like the light, the LED failed, and so I had to just guess if it was almost empty, if it was full of battery, and then it started having problems syncing as well.
No, that sounds
but
terrible.
I like that I can easily, with those, between the Beats X and the Power Beats Pro, I like that with the Beats X you can just pop it out real quick if somebody's going to say something, or I need to listen with just one in because I'm also, paying attention to kids, or I'm running out on the road. I need to be able to hear road noise. And you can easily stick it back in. It's not like with the Power Beats, I've got to like pull out the huge square and like turn it around my ear and stick it in. Yeah, I can easily in and out. The volume's right there, by my neck, since they're connected around. I mean, it's sometimes, sure, it did get tangled up. Like if you have a hoodie on and you're running, sometimes it would just kind of pull weird and you have to readjust, but it wasn't that big of a deal.
So for you, the combination of good enough sound quality and the fact that you had physical volume controls made them preferable to something like the Power Beats, which is, I guess, a little more convenient, and maybe they sound better, but the design of the Power Beats, it's a whole affair when you gotta pull them out. Yeah,
you're right. The sound is great, because I did feel like there was some bass missing with the Beats X as well, and we played with the volume controls, but it still was lacking a little bit.
I mean, we don't know if Apple is ever gonna do a proper update to the Beats X. It seems like they're pretty focused on the Power Beats and the AirPods right now.
Yeah, it's probably.
And you probably don't want to get a fourth model of the Beats X.
It seems foolish.
I mean, after three tries, it's probably it's probably
it's time to move on. Yeah,
it's time to move on. So I guess you're gonna keep using the Power Beats.
I think so. I liked a lot of the new. I'm sorry, I don't know the technical terms, but where you can change the setting on the iPhone to say like block out any noise canceling. You can do the noise canceling. That's a really cool feature. And then where you can have it purposefully be able to hear if somebody calls you, calls your name, like somebody in the room needs your attention, where you can hear it like clear as day. That was really cool. Because then you wouldn't have to have one AirPod out. You could have them both in and then hear also if somebody was trying to get your attention. Or a car is beeping at you. It's like, I wish that those things were on the Power Beats Pro. Like, I really just want them both to be squished together. but alas.
The Power Beats Pro with noise cancellation and all the AirPods feature. That would be nice, actually.
Yeah. And like the smaller packaging. Oh, I also like that it's tough to find. I guess it depends on your bag, but my bag is black and gray, just like the case. So sometimes I'm staring at my Power Beats Pro in my bag while I'm looking at them, like, oh, there they are. It's hard to see, but the AirPods Pro is white, and I don't know the inside of any bag that if it starts out white, it doesn't stay white for long. So these are easier to see in my bag too.
Well, Mary, thank you so much for doing this. This was really, I think it was really informative because I rarely get to hear the perspective of, somebody who's tried all these different earbuds. I think Stephen and Mike and I, we just use the AirPods, and I have very little experience with the Power Beats Pro, again, because my experience mostly consists of Sylvia complaining about them.
Headaches, yes. Yeah.
But I totally get it. Headache. It's not fun.
No.
Thank you so much, Mary. Unfortunately, I was just informed by my legal department that we need to hire Stephen back. Or his firing was not a definitive decision, I'm afraid. So
my reign was short.
Yes, I'm very sorry, but it was
Thank you for the chance, though.
Oh, thank you so much. It was fun. We're gonna have you back on sometime eventually, because as always you're the Power Beats resident expert at this point. We have Michael is the Apple TV guy, Steven, of course, all things Mac, old and new, and you will be the Power Beats expert, Mary. This is a title that I just bestowed upon you. Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Federico.
Thank you. Hey, I was talking to the chat room about stuff that I'm working on.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah. Also, that was fun with Mary. She did really good.
Good. I'm a little nervous to hear it.
Why?
In the edit?
No, don't worry. Don't worry. Yeah, everything's fine.
We should just keep doing the show.
Yes.
Okay. So earlier in the year, some point in the past, we did audio predictions. These don't have a name. They probably will at some point. But we thought it'd be a good time to review these because there's been a lot of stuff that's happened, as you and Mary just spoke about.
Audio predictions could be audictions? Predaudio?
I don't think that's it. But we can...
Nope. Gotta keep trying, man. Look, I really try. Yes. So, Michael is not here. So
it's true.
I guess this will be hard to adjudicate. Can you fill Michael's role?
Sure.
Stephen.
Yes. So
with the British accent.
I can't do the accent. But
sure?
So round one. Mike said that AirPods would gain more controls via touch actions.
Yeah, he's not wrong about that.
Not wrong about that at all.
I mean, he didn't say AirPods Pro, but,
He didn't say force sensor, but,
He did. We're gonna give him a point for that. Okay.
I said at least one more color option comes to the AirPods. I was incorrect.
Yes, you were. There were rumors that Apple was going to do the black AirPods and the gold AirPods for some reason, but that was not true.
It's not true. I feel like that could still happen at some point. Like if they need to refresh the product again and it's less of a big deal, colors are an obvious way to do it.
At least the black ones. At least in black, which is a standard enough color.
Sure.
For earbuds.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's doing them. The Samsung ones are black. The new Amazon buds are black.
Right.
It's pretty standard color.
Mm-hmm. And what was your first pick?
The AirPods. So this is the problem with this pick, that I didn't know any better, and I did too much for a single pick.
The classic blunder.
This is the classic mistake. I should have known better, honestly. The AirPods line is split in two. Yes, which is correct. comma, and this is where the tragedy occurred. The base version gets a small price drop in 2019. So this is incorrect. 2019 is still not over. Still maybe a chance that Apple is going to drop the price for the AirPods by the end of the year. I don't think they will, though. And therefore, this pick is half correct, half wrong. But we do not award half points on this show for these predictions.
That's correct.
So, ethically speaking, this is not a point. But from a friendship point of view, I feel like you should give me the point.
I don't think I can give it to you.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Well, then, please go.
Mike has 1. I have 0. You have 0.
Yeah.
Round 2. Don't worry, Mike blew it in this round and said Apple would release a mini HomePod 2019.
What was he thinking?
I don't know, but that's wrong.
I mean, again, the year's not over yet, but it's November and we haven't heard any rumors about this.
That's like prime time holiday shopping stuff, and this is not here. So
it's Michael didn't get the point. Steven, what's your next pick?
I said the HomePod would see a price drop, which it has.
Really?
Yes, it went.
When did this happen?
HomePod price reduction. Well, they're always on sale.
Right.
But they went in April from $349 to $299.
Oh, yes, I remember this. Well, this was when you were bragging about the year of Steven. When it happened, right? Okay.
That and all the executive shakeups, which I was also about.
You were part of. You were part of that.
I called Tim, Tim, I need a point on my podcast.
It's time to get rid of some people.
Please let Johnny Ive go.
Oh man, that happened this year.
I know, right?
My next prediction was, and I'm pretty happy about this one, Shortcuts will gain HomePod/AirPlay 2 actions to play audio on HomePod more quickly. And sure enough, with 13.2, all of this happened.
It did.
You can connect to a HomePod, you can connect to any AirPlay 2 speakers, and you can play, pause, shuffle, whatever. You can play audio on them from Shortcuts more quickly. So, good job, TG. This is a point.
So, we are all tied up now. 1-1-1.
Oh, yes, we are. Okay. And again, let's see. What did we do here? Oh, my God.
Mike said, Apple will create some new noise canceling technology. I don't think what they're doing is new. It seems like it's better than everybody else. I don't know. What do you think about this?
Because the AirPods Pro are new and the Beats Solo Pro are new, we don't know the technicalities of the feature. Therefore, it must, we gotta give Michael the benefit of the doubt. It's a new noise cancellation technology. He's gotta get the point.
Okay. I lean that way too, because Apple did talk about how they're using their audio processor and all that stuff. So I think we give it to him.
Yeah. Steven, what have you done? What have you done here? What is this pick?
It's so
bad.
What
were you thinking? This is worse than the mini HomePod.
This is the worst pick of all of them. That Apple would do some sort of Apple News integration into its audio products. I still think there's room for this. Look, the Echo does it. The Google Home does it. Apple does not. Maybe they could loop podcasts into this, but there's been no movement here of combining the voice assistant and the news service. So that is not a point for me.
Apple News integration. That was a bold prediction for you.
It was bold, but it was wrong.
Yes. And mine was also very, very wrong. It was based on rumors that we were hearing at the time. I said, we were hearing that Apple was going to make over-ear headphones, like proper Apple-branded non-Beats headphones. And I said, Apple HeadPods, because of course came up with the name, are wireless only, have no headphone jack, charge either via Lightning or USB-C with power delivery. Like, either via Lightning or USB-C is wild. What was I thinking?
Also, USB-C power delivery is way overkill for a set of headphones.
Why did I say either via Lightning or USB?
So I have a thought about those rumors that we heard that Apple was going to make headphones with the wireless chip and everything. I think those rumors ended up being true, except that it was a Beats product, right? Like you can imagine that people who are looking for Apple rumors in the supply chain or whatever, like the difference between Apple and Beats is basically just branding at this point. They are the same company. And so what I'm going to try to do in the future when we see these like headphone rumors, I'm going to try to be a little more agnostic about it. Like, yeah, that could be Beats or it could be Apple. Because I think that may have just gotten lost in the shuffle somewhere. Anyways, congratulations, Mike, who is not here this week, but is the winner of our audio predictions, it seems like.
If he's not here, should he be the winner?
That's a good.
I mean, if you're running a race and you don't show up, do you really win the race?
It's a good point.
So I don't know. Maybe he should get -1 point for not showing up.
Well, that makes it a 3-way tie. So
no,
3-way tie it is.
Michael is the winner of the 2019 Connected Apple Audio Predictions.
Yes.
The first installment of the AAP on Connected. I'm really trying to come up with a name.
I know. It's hard. You know, the Jeremys and the Rickies were just obviously the perfect name. This one, maybe someone can help us out and follow up.
The audios.
All right, we have some follow-up, and we have topics, and we have all sorts of stuff. But let me tell you about our first sponsor. How does that sound?
Okay, sure.
This episode of Connected is brought to you by Moo, an online print and design company specializing in customizable business cards, postcards, stickers, and more. If you're new to Moo, you can order a free sample pack on their website, moo.com, so you can see what their products look like and hold them in your hand. Like I said, they do business cards, postcards, but they also do invitations, letterheads, flyers, anything you would need to seamlessly promote you or your brand. And you can count on Moo's quality. They have all these cool finishes like gold foil, a new silver foil, which looks really nice, Ray spot gloss letterpress. All these little touches help you stand out. And if you're not a designer, that's okay, because Moo recently rolled out new templates for business cards, which are inspired by their most creative customers. I've used Moo for my business cards for years. I have really nice, thick paper. I've got rounded corners on mine. And anytime I hand a business card to somebody, I always get compliments on it. And that is thanks to Moo helping me stand out. So head on over to moo.com and use the code PRINTMOO to get 15% off orders of $50 or more. That's moo.com and code PRINTMOO for 15% off any order of $50 or more. Our thanks to Moo for their support of this show and Relay FM. So last week, y'all spoke about the AirPods Pro, and I wanted to weigh in on what I thought about them. This may overlap with what Mary talked about. I haven't heard what Mary spoke about. So the headline here is I don't think they're for me. For one, the regular AirPods fit really well in my ears. I find them comfortable. They don't fall out or anything. While the AirPods Pro do have those rubbery tips, I just don't find them as comfortable. I think it's because they are further in your ear, and I really dislike that feeling. I don't know what it is. I found tips that were comfortable, and the fit test thing checked out okay, but I found the additional pressure and sort of the fullness feeling I had in my ear I really disliked. I will say, though, that the active noise cancellation, like Mike said, is better than I expected. I find that generally a very uncomfortable sensation after a while, and wearing the AirPods Pro for several hours with the noise cancellation on was fine. By the end of it, I felt like fatigue was starting, but it was better than I thought. But at the end of the day, they're a little less comfortable for me personally, and I really like the regular AirPods, so I'm going to stay put.
I've grown used to the noise cancellation of the AirPods Pro over the past week. I also find it very comfortable, especially compared to other earbuds and headphones with noise cancellation. I do get the sort of the weird feeling for the first couple of minutes, but that it's sort of it's almost like it fits itself to like over time to work better for me. Like it gets better after a couple of minutes. I don't know if it's a new pressure system that Apple has created with the vents in the AirPods Pro, but it really does work well. Like it feels a little strange for the first couple of minutes, and then it gets a lot better. And I tried either in pure noise cancellation mode or the transparency mode. Works really well. The only issues that I've had over the past week, just randomly sometimes the AirPods Pro disconnect from my iPhone or Apple TV, but it only happens once. Then I gotta reconnect and it's fine. It appears that like it happens at least once after I take them out of the case and I first connect them to a device. They drop the connection after like a minute. It happened like 3 times, so it's completely random and occasional, but I thought I'd mention this. And yeah, I'm really happy so far. So, Steven, you're going back.
Yeah, I'm gonna stay with the. I have the AirPods 2, the revision with the wireless case, and I'm gonna stay with those. So
yeah, well, makes sense.
Yeah, but I don't really have a lot of environments where I need the active noise cancellation. Like I'm not on a train or a bus on any sort of regular basis, right? I don't work in coffee shops with headphones on. Like for me and my purposes, the features of the AirPods are totally fine. And because they fit well, and I can ride my bike with them, I can run with them, they really fit me. And so I'm happy that they're going to continue to meet my needs. And I'm not worried about Apple getting rid of them, like the AirPods Pro taking over. I think they will remain distinct products for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so.
Because there are people who want options and who want a cheaper product, right? The AirPods Pro are expensive.
Also, in follow-up, I mentioned last week that the wallet case that I'm using with my iPhone, it's the Bellroy wallet case, was not working with NFC triggers, and I was wrong. It appears that I ran into a bug with shortcuts and automation on my iPhone. The top section of the case, right next to the camera where the NFC chip is located on an iPhone, it does work. It scans NFC stickers and tags successfully. So the issues that I've had last week, they were just random bugs in iOS 13.
Weird.
So the case, yeah, I know. So the case, because it's thinner at the top compared to the bottom section where you stick in your credit cards, it does work just fine with NFC. I've installed and I guess this is also follow-up. We have the first beta of iOS 13.3 and iPadOS 13.3 and all the other, watchOS, tvOS, and all that. I've installed it on my phone last night. Then I put it on the iPad Pro. Of course, it fixes more bugs than 13.2, and automation has been fine. So all the NFC triggers are working correctly for me. And we're gonna talk about this, the issues with Apple software later. But yeah, more bugs fixed in 13.3, which is now in public beta too. It just came out a few minutes ago.
I'm off the beta train for a while. I just. I generally do this. I'll run them during the summer at a certain point, leading, up to the releases, and then I stayed on it through the 13.1 cycle, but then I got off before 13.2. So I'm back on the public release on everything, and I'd imagine I'll stay there until sometime late next summer with iOS 14 getting into shape.
That must feel nice.
It's great. So you have a tiny topic, and it is ironic because you made fun of me for thinking about Apple incorporating Apple News into its audio products. But your tiny topic is integrating Apple Music and Apple TV more closely. So why is this not a silly idea?
Because mine makes more sense than yours.
Ouch.
So no, I do think that actually, the Apple News integration, once you explain it, it does make some sense. It just, when you see the Apple News name written down, it elicits that kind of response, I suppose, because it's Apple News. It's not great. Are you still paying? Have you ever paid for Apple News Plus?
Nope.
Okay. Yeah, I canceled my subscription a few weeks ago. I realized I was not reading magazines as much as I thought I would. Go figure. So here's my thought. So I was watching a bunch of shows on Apple TV Plus, specifically For All Mankind. I watched the first episode, and I realized that Apple was using a non-original soundtrack. They were using actual songs from other artists in the show. And so I thought, wouldn't it be nice if, because Apple now owns both ends of the experience, they have a TV streaming service and they have a music streaming service. Wouldn't it be nice to have an integration between the two, where either during the episode a banner pops up that shows you the song, or if you don't want to be distracted, there could be a section within the TV app that tells you music from this episode, and it's got a list of the songs that appear in the episode, and you can open Apple Music to listen to them or add them to a playlist, whatever. And I tweeted this, and of course, very helpfully, a lot of people told me, oh, but Apple Music already has playlists for the music of For All Mankind and C and The Morning Show, which is exactly my point. I shouldn't have to know that these playlists exist. Also, I'm talking about something else completely, which is show me just the songs from this episode. I don't want a playlist containing all of the songs. I just want to know what the songs in this very specific episode that I'm watching are. And I really think that it would make sense to have this integration between the two services, if you're subscribing to both of them, of course. And, maybe it could even be a Shazam feature, because Apple also owns Shazam at this point. I just think it would be useful so that I don't need to know beforehand that I can find a playlist for The Morning Show and all those other TV shows in Apple Music. Just show me inside the TV app what the songs are, because you own the service, both of them. And this integration should be possible. It's, I think it will make a lot of sense.
I always forget Apple bought Shazam.
Yeah, they did.
This would be super cool. It reminded me of Amazon Prime Video. If you watch that on the iPad, or I think even the Apple TV, you can pause it and get information about who's in the scene, trivia about the show, that sort of thing. And integrating music into that would be great, especially on a show like For All Mankind, which is a period piece. There's a lot of music in there that you may want to check out that you're maybe not instantly familiar with. It seems like it's just like low-hanging fruit, and maybe they'll end up doing that, as these services become more mature, but it's still early days. But I do like the idea.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's good.
We'll send the letter to Tim Cook.
Yes, please.
Officially request it. Yes.
CC Eddie Q on that. Make sure it goes to the
for sure.
right place. I have a quick question. Does Google Docs include multi-window support?
No.
No?
No.
It does not. How much are you using multi-windowed apps on your iPad?
That's a good question. I think I addressed this in my review in September. Not as much as I thought. But it's a feature that I'm glad it's there for the few times that I need it. I know that it's possible now. I think my problem is that I've conditioned myself to not think of multiple windows on iPad for 10 years. And just the way that I work and the way that I interact with apps has been shaped by that limitation of everything is a single window. And I think it's taken a lot of time for me to get used to the idea that everything doesn't have to be a single window anymore. You can open multiple windows if you want. But I got 10 years of muscle memory and workflows and just ways of getting work done that I need to update and rethink. So it's taking me a while. I do appreciate the inclusion, though. Like a few weeks ago, I needed to work on a multiple markdown documents at the same time, and I was using IA Writer, and it supports multiple windows now. And so I'm glad that I was able to do that. You long press on a document and you open it in a new window. Or I do things like multiple windows in Mail, for example. But it's not like I completely revamped the way that I work on iPad Pro because of multiple windows. It's just it's something that I use occasionally when it could be useful. Otherwise, the way that I work on iPad is not that different from 6 months ago.
That's exactly where I stand on it. I've used it a handful of times, mostly with Safari, but it's just I just don't think about it. I just don't think about it in those times when I'm working on the iPad. Now, I am using the ability to have multiple apps in slide over. I really like that. Most of the time, I have like Tweetbot and Slack in slide over, and I can switch between them while I'm working on something else. That has really changed how I work on the iPad, but the multiple windows hasn't made a big impact.
Yeah, totally agree. The slide over thing is by far my most used. That and column view in files. Those two are the most used new features for me. Well, I mean, of course, if you don't count shortcuts as maybe you should count shortcuts as a feature, but in terms of non-shortcuts things, slide over and column view in files. Those two I use a lot. So yeah, Google Docs though. If you want to do multiple windows for Google Docs and you have an iPad, you can use multiple Safari windows and access Google Docs from the browser, which is not perfect, but it does a good enough job. Some of the controls are kind of weird. They don't necessarily work well in Safari for iPad, but they do work. You can have lists and do indentation and highlights and that kind of stuff. And I guess you could do that. I've been doing that myself.
Yeah, Docs is the primary thing I want it for, but I haven't done a lot of it in Safari, but you're right. The basics seem to work just fine. I mean, for my needs, creating show outlines, it's basically bulleted lists and some formatting. It's nothing real fancy, but some of my big spreadsheets I use, I haven't tried and I'd be a little hesitant to, but I'm not ever in a situation where I need like a spreadsheet that's in Google Sheets up with something else, because those spreadsheets usually are big and I want the maximum screen real estate dedicated to them. Well, that is follow-up. We're going to get into some Adobe stuff. Adobe had a big week, but let me tell you about our second sponsor, and that is FreshBooks. If you're a freelancer, saving 192 hours be a big deal, and FreshBooks can help you do that with their super simple cloud accounting software. By simplifying tasks like invoicing, tracking expenses, and getting paid online, FreshBooks has drastically reduced the time it takes for over 10 million people to deal with their paperwork. FreshBooks automates late payment email reminders so you can spend less time chasing payments and more time working your magic. You don't have to go into your task list and add a reminder for yourself to follow up on that invoice. FreshBooks will just do it for you automatically. And when you email a client an invoice, FreshBooks will tell you whether or not they've seen it, whether they've opened it, which puts an end to the guessing games. If you're listening to this and you haven't tried FreshBooks yet, now is the time. FreshBooks is offering an unrestricted 30-day free trial for listeners of the show. No credit card is required. All you have to do is go to freshbooks.com/connected and enter the code CONNECTED in the How Did You Hear About Us section. We thank FreshBooks for their support of the show and Relay FM. All right, Federico, tell me about fonts on iOS through Adobe Creative Cloud.
Sure. Obviously, Adobe had a bunch of announcements this week. They had their Adobe Max conference, and as part of that, they've also been releasing a few updates to various apps that they offer. And specifically on iOS, they updated their Creative Cloud app to support one of the new features of iOS and iPadOS 13, which is installing custom fonts natively on your device without having to do the certificate-based workaround that used to be, in the past, the only way to install custom fonts. So with the new Creative Cloud app, you can use it for free. And if you use it for free, you have access to 1,300 fonts. So that's a lot of fonts that are available for free. And you can open the app, you go to the font section, and you can browse called the Adobe fonts, and you can search, you can select them. You can preview them. You can install multiple fonts at once. And the way that it works is this is called for developers a font provider app. So Creative Cloud is using the new font provider APIs to bring up a native dialog in iOS 13 that asks you, do you really want to install these fonts? And you confirm the process, and later you can find those fonts in settings. So if you open the settings app and you go to general fonts, you will see a list of all the fonts that you have installed, as well as information about the font and the individual typefaces contained within the font. So you can see the font manufacturer and the copyright and the file size and all that kind of stuff. It's really impressive, especially when you drill down into the typeface preview. So if you have different styles like thin or bold or heavy, you can preview them all. You can preview the entire character set. You can preview the standard lorem ipsum text. It's really well done. It's very nice, and it's the main advantage is you don't have to deal with third-party hacks anymore. So it used to be that in previous years before iOS 13, you would have to use something like AnyFont to load custom font files on your in the AnyFont app and install a certificate via settings that basically made the font available system-wide. This is roughly the same idea in that you do install a font file and you make it available system-wide, but it's not based on having to use a certificate for that, which has other security implications and all of that. This is all done natively. It's handled by the settings app, and when the font is installed, it's made available by all other iPhone and iPad apps that use the native font picker. So there's a font picker API, which has also been improved in iOS 13. And all the fonts that you install, in this case, using Adobe Creative Cloud, they will be available in apps like Pages or Drafts. Anything that uses the native font picker gets access to fonts that you've installed this way. In addition to the 1,300 fonts that you get for free, if you are a Creative Cloud subscriber, you can use Typekit fonts with the Creative Cloud app for a total, once you combine those two sources together, 17,000 fonts. Now, I don't know who would ever need to use 17,000. Again, that's 1,000 fonts. Unless I'm sure there's someone who needs to use 17. Anyway, the point is, it's remarkable that you can install all these fonts via Creative Cloud. iOS doesn't have the equivalent of what's it called on the Mac? Fontbook,
right?
Like a dedicated app for managing install fonts and previewing them and doing different tests with them. But it's good enough. It's a good enough approximation of that in settings. You can remove fonts at any time. And of course, when due to the way that it's designed, fonts are basically an extension of the app. So if you install a font and then you delete the app that provides the font is also gone. So if you install a font and then delete Creative Cloud, you will no longer get access to those fonts. So just keep that in mind. Maybe stash Creative Cloud in a folder and forever leave it there. This is nice. I was wondering what happened to font provider apps that Apple showed off at WWDC. This is a great first example of that API. It's really impressive when you consider how these fonts, you can now use them in Photoshop, also by Adobe. You can use them in any other app, and this is a big deal for anybody who does. What's it called? Like when you do putting together magazines. Like there's a word for that. Like
graphic design.
No, there's a different word. There's a different word for that.
I don't know. Layout work? I don't know what you want.
Yeah, anyway, if you do things that require fonts and custom layouts, this is a big deal because you can now do it on the iPad. And so the fact that these fonts show up system-wide in all apps page layout is probably what I'm thinking of.
Sure.
I think it's very nice. I think it's a very nice feature. It's done in an Apple way in terms of like security permissions and the fact that these fonts are basically extensions of their host apps. I think it's very good.
Yeah, I mean, I downloaded it and played with it. It blew my mind that Adobe doesn't support password managers for login. So you just get a text field.
Yeah.
Come on.
You
made an app that can install fonts. Like, you should be able to open 1Password for me. But it's very similar to what you get on the Mac. You get links to all the apps, and you have a bunch of tutorials, and of course you have your fonts, but also your files. So if you have a Creative Cloud account or subscription, you can keep like PSDs or Illustrator like in Adobe's cloud, and they're on your computers. All that's accessible on the iPad as well. It really ties iOS and the Mac a lot closer together. And, what is cool about this is that Adobe, and we're going to talk about Photoshop in a second, they are sometimes pretty late to the game, and there are sometimes coming in a little weak with their initial offering. But it's clear to me that they do think about iOS and iPadOS as real platforms for people to create things on, and that's cool, right? Like, it is cool that the iPad and the iPhone have access to these tools now, and I think Adobe is leaning into them harder than ever.
I'm still thinking about this. I'm sorry. What's the name of the app that was on the Mac that allowed you to do page layouts?
Quark Express.
Okay.
Quark, InDesign is Adobe's app.
Okay.
There was PageMaker back in the day. All those sorts of apps.
I'm trying to see if desktop publishing. That's also probably a word that I was thinking of.
Microsoft Publisher. There's all sorts of.
Yeah, they should. I'm still waiting for. Again, probably never gonna happen. Honestly, I really want to have something like iBooks Author on iPad, especially now that we have custom fonts and we can do multiple windows, and there's files. So you can import assets from files from external drives. You can do column viewing files. I know that you can put together ebooks in Pages, but it's not like working with iBooks Author. I worked with iBooks Author 6 years ago at this point, when I converted one of my stories, the editorial review, to an iBook, used to be called iBooks, ebook, built with iBooks Author. And so to do all those fancy animations and the interactive galleries and all of that, I feel like it would be great to have something like that again on iPad Pro, especially now that you have the pencil and all these new integrations and features that have come out since 2013. But then again, probably never gonna happen because Apple updates Pages a few times a year. I struggle to imagine they wanna do a separate. It's not even called iBooks anymore. So Books Author, I don't think it's happening, but it would be nice.
Yeah, that app has not received a lot of attention from Apple. They've had a couple of updates to it, but I've done projects in it too, and it is pretty buggy and it's very resource intensive on the Mac. Like, trying to create complex layouts, any Mac under the sun will grind to a halt. I think they ought to just roll that stuff into Pages and make iBooks Author files a target. And if you just want to do EPUB, that's fine. But if you want to do more, you can, because that app is just going nowhere fast.
Another hope, I guess, would be to wait for the folks at Affinity. They're working on a Affinity publisher, but it's desktop only. So maybe in the future, something like that will come out for iPad. I know they're working, they have Affinity Photo, which is both on Mac and iPad. They have the Illustrator version, what's it called? Affinity something else. Affinity Designer, maybe Affinity Designer is their vector drawing app. And they also have Affinity Publisher. I would love to see Affinity Publisher on iPad eventually.
Adobe also has shipped Photoshop for iPad, which we saw shown off. Was that a year ago?
Yes, it was a year ago.
Wow.
I'm pretty sure that I was at the Apple event for the new iPad Pro, and Adobe was on stage showing off iPad. Yeah, they were. They had the demo with the crazy PSD weighing like multiple gigabytes, and they were showing how the new iPad Pro was, scrolling, multiple zoom levels in that PSD. Yeah, that was a year ago. And now the app is out on the App Store. And it's not what people were expecting. There's been a sort of a mild controversy on Twitter this week about how Photoshop on iPad is the first version of a long journey that Adobe would like to be the real Photoshop for iPad in the end. But right now, it's not. And let me contextualize. It is the real Photoshop in the sense that this is not like a spin-off of Photoshop. We've had something like Photoshop Express on iOS before. This is the Photoshop. It uses the same foundation and engine as desktop Photoshop. You can open all of your cloud PSDs, which is this new format that Adobe has been using for the past couple of years with Creative Cloud. All of your desktop PSDs will open on iPad with Photoshop. The problem is this is a huge project for Adobe, to unify their engines and their UI stack between the desktop and iPad. And right now, the issue is the iPad version doesn't have all the features that you have on the desktop version of Photoshop. I think Adobe explained this saying that right now, the iPad version of Photoshop is focused on compositing, masking, and basic retouching, meaning that a lot of the advanced controls and I'm not a Photoshop user, so it's very likely that I'm getting my terminology wrong or I don't know the terminology at all. But a lot of features that you have in Photoshop for desktop you don't have here, like canvas rotation, for example, still not here, supposedly coming soon, or subject selection, refining the edge refinement, all that stuff it's not on iPad, but it's coming later. And so far, this version of Photoshop is sort of stuck between, this sort of being a companion to Photoshop for desktop, but also wanting to be more. This Photoshop doesn't want to be a companion forever. Adobe's goal, in their own words, is to actually have it be the real Photoshop on iPad. Mm-hmm. They just need more time.
The full Photoshop,
it's
if you will.
Not real, the full Photoshop. Right now, it's still a pretty impressive Pro app for iPad. All your PSDs will open. There's support for split view and slide over and keyboard shortcuts, but not multiple windows on iPad. It can export files as PNG, JPEG, PSD, TIFF. Does not support RAW photos, so you cannot edit your RAW photos in Photoshop. So there's a bunch of limitations like that. A lot of people were upset by this because we were all under the impression, following rumors and interviews that Adobe did over the past year, and their own presence on stage at the Apple event last year, we all thought that, oh yes, they're gonna bring the full Photoshop on iPad when it launches eventually. And then we started getting the idea that this was not gonna happen when Adobe opened up the test flight beta a bit more to other users over the past few months, and users started saying, look, this is not the full Photoshop, it's missing a bunch of features. And it's been a year, so I feel like Adobe felt the need to at least launch this first version on the App Store, especially to coincide with their own Adobe Max conference. I don't have an opinion on this in the sense that I don't use Photoshop. I understand why people are upset. I also understand how Photoshop it's an application that's been around for 30 years, I want to say.
Yeah, forever.
I can only imagine how massive of an effort it must be to steer this ship in a completely different direction. To take this code base and modernize it for all kinds of computers and form factors, and to have the cloud integration in the middle. I get it. It takes time for it takes time for simpler apps to reach feature parity between Mac and iPad. Imagine Photoshop. And I'm just glad that they're actually committed to this. I don't think this is the kind of project that Adobe will just say, yeah, we're going to try and see what it's like, and then they will eventually abandon it. No, this is the real Photoshop, the full Photoshop. It ties into your Creative Cloud subscription. They have provided a roadmap for features that will be coming next. And, Adobe's goal is, John Gruber wrote about this a few weeks ago. They are, it's a massive undertaking that consists of unifying the Photoshop UI and engine across all platforms to have one Photoshop that works everywhere. So that's not what it is today, but I'm very confident that it'll be in the future. And I think that's very important for the iPad Pro as a platform.
It's such an obvious device for this sort of work, especially when you think about the Apple Pencil and what it can do. And Adobe is not the first to this. I mean, we rattled off a bunch of third-party apps that compete in this space and who all do a really good job. But the truth is, most people just want to use the Adobe products they're already used to. They don't want to switch to Affinity or switch to, Pixelmator Pro or something like that when they've been using Adobe for 20 years in their job. And as the iPad becomes more powerful and a more likely laptop replacement for more and more people, they've just got to be there. And I think you're right. They're in this for the long haul. And I can't imagine the work that it must take, but it's work that I think is good and beneficial for their users and for Adobe, because they don't want to be stuck on the traditional PC as it gives way to, devices like the iPad and the Surface and things like that.
Yeah, and this is a real-time follow-up. I was told on Twitter that Affinity have said that Publisher is coming to iPad next year, so 2020. 2020 should be fun for. I have a feeling that 2020 is going to be fun for iPad Pro software, and that's because in addition to this announcement and Adobe being committed to Photoshop, by next year, a lot of developers, a lot of companies will have had a lot of time with iPad OS and the new Files app and the new APIs, and there's probably going to be new iPad Pro hardware. So that's exciting. I think it's going to be I have a feeling it's going to be a pretty good iPad year, 2020. New decade and all that. The iPad is going to be 10 next year, by the way.
Whoa.
Yeah. January 27, 2010. That's 10 years of iPad. Mm-hmm.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Feels like yesterday. What happened?
Yeah. I don't know. Yeah.
Adobe has also shown off Illustrator. It's going to come to the iPad. Speaking of 2020, The Verge has a nice article walking through a bunch of the features. And I think Illustrator is a really good example of an app that is probably it has the potential to be better on the iPad than on the desktop because of the pencil in particular, where you're doing really fine drawing work. And a lot of people use things like, Wacom tablets on the Mac or the PC or other sort of stylus inputs. And to have that just natively on the iPad is a big deal. And so I'm looking forward to Illustrator. I don't use Illustrator much, but I would imagine that people who do, this could be a big deal.
Yeah. The Verge has a few screenshots and GIFs showing Illustrator on iPad in action. It looks good. There's a lot of controls, a lot of floating palettes, advanced controls, which I always like to see. Looks like a desktop app being ported to the iPad and supporting the pencil and touch. Great. Yeah, this is great. Yeah, this is exactly what we need on iPad Pro. So also 2020. So very nice.
It's coming. And I think these apps benefit from the iPad Pro, being the 11-inch or the 12.9. But remember, the iPad Air, the iPad, even the iPad Mini has pencil support now. So you could run these on those devices as well. I think when we say iPad Pro, we think about that as sort of the most powerful versions of these things, but these will run on the regular iPads as well. All right, let me tell you about our next sponsor. That is Hover. When you have a big idea, the place to start is Hover, that big first leap, because your business starts with a domain name. And Hover has over 300 domain name extensions to choose from. So no matter what you want to build, there's a domain name waiting for you. And they have excellent technical support to answer any questions you may have. They're dedicated to getting you online, not upselling you. Hover has free Who is privacy, so the bad guys don't get your info. Really clean UI when you're checking out or dealing with DNS or things like that. It's very simple to use and understand. And they have monthly sales on popular top-level domains. I've used Hover for years and years, setting up a bunch of new domains there, pointing them where I need them to go. I don't look anywhere else. Anytime I start a new project, I start with Hover. I can put in my keywords into their domain search tool and come up with a domain name really quickly. Buy your domain and start using it today. Go to hover.com/connected and get a 10% discount on all new purchases. Once again, that URL is hover.com/connected. Make a name for yourself with Hover. Our thanks to Hover for their support of this show and Relay FM. So 2019, I think in hindsight, will be a year where we think a lot about Apple's software quality.
I thought you were going to go with the year of Steven again.
It is also the year of Steven, but it's also the year of software quality issues at Apple.
How fitting for the year of Steven.
Hey. My next rookie. I predict bugs in Apple's next software release. And I wanted to take a little time and talk about that with you, because we're sort of done with the release cycle, right? Like you said, there's new betas for 13.3 and watchOS 6.2 and whatever else. So we're kind of out of the phase of these being new releases. Things are beginning to settle down. I wanted to ask you a few questions about this. I guess I want to start with, has this year really been worse than previous years? It's always easy to think about the past with rose-colored glasses, but you're in this stuff every day, a lot more than most people. You write these reviews, you review apps, you spend time with these products. Do you think 2019 is worse than previous years?
That's a tough question, because everyone's experience is different, and that's because everyone is using different hardware with different setups and different apps. Personally, so that's all that I can offer, my personal context. I don't think it's been as bad as, say, 2013 or 2014 with iOS 7 and iOS 8, or even iOS 11 in 2017. I think those years have been worse, specifically as far as iOS, so iPhone and iPad are concerned. I think 2019, the problem is, I see two main problems. First, we come from the year of iOS 12, so 2018, which has been a pretty good year in terms of software stability on iOS. Apple very publicly said in iOS 12, we're going to focus on performance and stability and getting rid of bugs and polishing the whole thing. They postponed, they didn't officially confirm this, but we know that they postponed certain features for 2019 because they wanted to focus on improving the system last year. So coming from that, we're now met with all these problems, and it does affect our perspective, because we thought that Apple had gotten better, but it turns out that improving software is not forever. It doesn't necessarily mean that you did it once, well then you're set. It means that it's a continuous effort. It's like a garden. You got to take care of the garden every year, in this case, every month. It's not like because Apple fixed a bunch of bugs in iOS 12, then they're good. It means that they were good last year, and this year, you add features, well, you add more bugs. And that's the second problem. The second problem I see is that coming from iOS 12, Apple maybe felt some kind of pressure to overcompensate for all the functionalities that they didn't ship last year. Combine that with the fact that the Apple ecosystem is now bigger than ever. You have the iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, Mac, ARKit, CarPlay, HomePod, AirPods, and Apple TV. All those products, if you combine that with the need to overcompensate for 2018, the whole situation is basically compounded, and you have more features on all kinds of platforms, and you introduce bugs, right? And I'm guessing that this is really challenging for me to talk about, because I've never worked in a company, right? And this is where Michael would be useful to have in this discussion. He's worked at a company. He has experience with dealing with managers and multiple levels and layers of management. What it's like to communicate, to handle communications in that kind of corporation. I don't have that kind of context. I don't have that kind of experience. But I want to say that there must have been, based on some conversations that I had months ago, you have a feature that's ready to ship. You cannot hold it any longer. You just, features that have been ready for 2 years, it's time to release them. And so, if anything, I feel like the main problem this year has been finding this balance between we have all these platforms that we got to take care of, but we also have these internal and external pressures from the press, from users, to release new features, to send a message, or because it's features that people actually need. And it's hard to balance that. It's been hard for Apple to balance that, to have the same attention to focus and stability that they had last year with releasing new features and new functionalities at the same time for 7, 8 platforms. It's crazy. And in addition to that, I also want to add that we've seen historically, and even just last month, how Apple is still the company that when new hardware needs to ship, the software needs to be ready in whatever state it is. The iPhone 11 and 11 Pro launched with with 13, and 13.1 was ready to go a few days later. Mm-hmm. So it's a bunch of different issues. I don't think there's a single answer. Don't believe anybody who has a single answers for this kind of stuff. It's never. I wish it were that easy to have a single answer. Like it happened because X or Y. It's not like that. I think it's a combination of factors. Maybe some of the ones that I just mentioned. But my wish, and I think Rene Ritchie did a video on this a few weeks ago, and I think he also mentioned this, Stephen. The idea, even though I wouldn't like it, right? Because my work depends on, well, not depends, but I take advantage of these big software releases, right, with my reviews. But I think Apple should consider having and publicly state that they are gonna have a more staggered release of their software updates going forward. To not do this big all at once software updates that on a Tuesday you have 6 different OSs dropping all at the same time, because you're just begging for issues and problems to come up at that point. So I know that it's a beautiful thing to have these events, right? New version of iOS with 200 new features. But I do wonder if Apple, at their current scale and at their current exposure to the press and to millions of users, and with all these platforms and services and devices that they have, I wonder and I ask, can they do that anymore? Like, it feels like you reach a certain point, such a massive company, such a massive line of products, you cannot do the big event with a massive software release all at once. And you got to find a better balance between promising features coming in a new version of the OS in September and trying to be a little more realistic and saying, well, maybe actually this is more of a roadmap and this feature is coming in April or March, I mean, that big release cycle is really an echo of the 90s or even the late 80s, where you had these big software releases and they had to be big because you needed people to buy them because they had to get them on discs in stores, right? I mean, you think about on the macOS side for a second, going from 10.2 to 10.3, you had to go buy a DVD and it was a big deal, right? And now it's annual and they're smaller until they're not, like Catalina, and people get mad that all their apps broke because they've been conditioned into thinking they're smaller releases. And I think it is time for Apple to consider
if that's necessary or not. Because it's a historic thing, and maybe they're just doing it because they've always done it. But another factor is the competitive landscape has changed, and Android is still on a annual release cycle, roughly. But at least the last several versions have been smaller and smaller as Google does more through Google Play services. So they're not updating Gmail as part of the next version of Android. They're updating Gmail when Gmail is ready. And they push an update to the Gmail app whenever it's good to go. They've decoupled features from the OS. And Apple could certainly do that. Like, why do we have to wait for a major release for a new mail feature? Well, that's a bad example because Apple never adds features to mail, but Safari, something that they care about.
No, but that's a very good point. And I think we're starting to see hints of that. If you look at Apple Music, right? If you look at the music app, aside from the time synced lyrics and the context menus in iOS 13, it is essentially unchanged as a native client from last year. But it is completely different from last year. And how's that possible? Well, that's because over the past 12 months, Apple has added new sections, new playlists,
right,
to Apple Music as a service. And because they add it as a service, the app is different. You see new content, you see new sections, you see new initiatives. Even though the app didn't get an update, like the binary, the app itself is mostly the same. The experience of using Apple Music is radically different from 12 months ago or 18 months ago. And that is exactly what you're saying. Like, they're rolling out updates to the service. And I think as Apple gets more and more in the services game, like with Apple Music and TV Plus and, news, and, I wonder if they should do more and more. I mean, even iCloud Drive, why do I need to keep waiting for files to get an update if I want to get new iCloud Drive features? So that idea of Apple moving to, becoming a services company also means that a service should be something that is continually offered to users and continually improved for users. And so what I've seen with Apple Music, I agree with you. I would like to start seeing with other apps as well. So I don't know.
And Apple doesn't have to be as competitive with Windows and Android as it once did, right? Like, if Android is not getting these big updates every year, Apple doesn't have to play defense as hard. In iOS 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, 7, those early days, that was true because Android was getting much better at a pretty fast pace and they had to keep up. But the reality is that all of these OSs, mobile or desktop, all have basically the same features at this point. They're all feature complete, right? Like, there are things, of course, we want added to iOS and macOS, but we're well past the days of it doesn't have cut, copy, and paste, right? Like, they are mature platforms now. And as platforms mature, you can slow down on the release cycle if it means that you're willing to trade a little time for things like stability. And Apple, they did that last year, but it was still an annual release. And so I think you're right when you say this year's a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction of, we got to add all this stuff back in because last year was quiet. I think the reality is most people who buy a new iPhone or hit update, once a year or whenever it comes out, they're not counting those features, right? They're not talking to their friends about, oh my gosh, iOS 12 is so quiet. Look, iOS 13 is quiet too. What's going on in Cupertino, right? Yeah. That's our world.
Yeah.
But that's not the bulk of those billion active devices Apple has. Those people don't think that way. But they do notice when things are buggy. They do notice that when you're in iMessage, the keyboard goes away. Or when you open the Shortcuts app, all your shortcuts are gone. Or your battery life is really bad. They do notice the downside. And I think Apple needs to be willing to sacrifice a little bit of praise from the people who want new features in a trade with the stability and the security that people want and demand every day, that everyday people demand. And I think iOS 13 could be that tipping point. I don't know. What I'm a little afraid of is that iOS 14 will be like iOS 12, that they're going to pull back on features and they're going to fix the things and make it more stable. but then iOS 15 in 2 years will be like this year. And they're on this like weird pendulum swinging back and forth. And that's not good for anybody. It's not good for users. It's not good for those of us in the press. And it's not good for the developers and designers at Apple working on this stuff, right? I think about those people who, and don't get me wrong, like I don't ever temper my thoughts on Apple software or hardware, like considering the feelings of people who work on it. Like that's not my job. My job is to talk about products. But in an environment where you are rushing around fixing a bunch of bugs for 3 months and then you have to move on to the next new feature, leaving bugs open and undone, that's not a sustainable way to run a software organization either, I don't think, right? People are going to get burned out and frustrated at their jobs if they can't do a job well done, and Apple should be concerned about that too. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think so. I think it is fair. I do want to address this idea that I've seen mentioned by a few people on Twitter lately, that Apple should fire Craig Federighi, or that Craig Federighi should be held responsible for these issues. And, well, first of all, I think there's this sort of strange obsession that some people have, this idea of the sort of the cinematic firing of somebody, you're trying to find a single responsible individual for software issues. And yes, we found the person and we fired the person. And, just because you fired somebody doesn't mean that the problems are gone or that a solution has been achieved. All the, we could talk about how in conversations that we had, usually at WWDC, how Craig Federighi seems to be a pretty well respected and beloved individual at Apple. And we could talk about how most engineers speak in high praise of Federighi because he's actually an engineer.
Yeah, he's one of. He came up through the organization, right? He is one of them.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of the every time that I talk to somebody who works at Apple and the topic of what's he like working with Craig comes up, I always get the sense that that Craig Federighi fundamentally understands the issues with a specific feature or a project, because he gets down to to the nitty gritty of an issue. Like he understands code, he understands what it's like to build software, which is not something that you could say for all managers. Not to name any names, but I think it's very easy to get an idea of which executives at Apple understand code and the ones that do not. But I guess the main idea of firing the manager and expecting the problem to be fixed. There are situations where you do need to replace an executive. I'm sure that's the case, has been the case and will be the case at Apple. I don't think in this specific instance of Apple having a software quality ongoing problem, I don't think it would be the solution to, yes, Craig should be held responsible because he's the executive in charge of all things software. But for all the issues that we've seen, I think we should also remember, and I mean, no way, no, it's really challenging to have this discussion without being accused of being an apologist. So I'm just going for it, whatever. I don't care. I know that, my perspective is what it is. But I think for all the bugs and issues that we've seen, I think we should give credit where it's due. I think it's pretty remarkable that Apple can manage all of these devices in a single ecosystem with the kind of integration that they have. And I think we should, among many other people, the executive currently in charge of Apple software, we should give credit to that you can use an assistant on your watch or on a TV or on a smart speaker. Yes, it's not perfect. I don't think it's as catastrophic as some people make it out to be. That's my perspective. I may be wrong. You You're free to say that I'm an apologist. I don't care. But I think these discussions, when I see them on Twitter, in the past I used to interact and engage with those. These days I just pass by. But I don't think taking things to the extreme is necessarily useful to this conversation. And that also goes the other way around. I don't think apologizing for everything that Apple does is any good, honestly. I think the man, the truth is complicated. Is this middle ground of thousands of shades of gray, and unless you work at Apple, you probably don't have a good sense of what is even the truth of this conversation. Nobody knows. But I think these extremes of Craig Federighi should be fired, or Apple is perfect, they essentially moot points that contribute nothing to the conversation except for the biases of the people who bring up these arguments. So I disagree with the notion of let's fire Craig Federighi and see what happens, because there's just the equivalent of throwing a executive spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks. Yes, let's replace the guy in charge. Maybe things will get better. No, turns out they will not get better, because now you got to train all your engineers to report to a different person who has a different management style. We'll never get to the bottom of this.
And if he is as popular as he seems on the inside, getting rid of him isn't going to do anything for morale.
Right. Yeah, because in all of this,
you're going to have people
exactly
upset.
In all of this, you also got to remember these are people writing code and reporting to their boss. They're not like algorithms spitting out code on a daily basis. There are people that have a relationship with their manager, and the manager reports to Craig, and it's complicated, man. It's not. Don't never believe the hot takes on Twitter. That's my conclusion. They're never accurate. They're never true, and they're useless. So there's that.
It's good. It's good life advice. If Apple were to move to this cycle that looked like WWDC is really a roadmap for the upcoming year, like Renee pitches in that video, how do they get there? Like, what does that actually look like?
It comes with a clear roadmap at WWDC. It comes. It entails more timely documentation for developers who are building features for these multiple platforms. I think it is absurd to be in a situation like we've been this summer with multiple APIs for iOS 13 and iPadOS 13 or shortcuts without any documentation until September. I think that's just not ideal, right? It's not a situation you want to put developers in. But yeah, there should be a roadmap. And I know that Apple is maybe institutionally against the idea of a clear roadmap, but I also think that it's time for a change. Like, you cannot possibly expect to keep doing this forever, this big September release, and then you announce something and journalists talk about it, like, I don't know, iCloud folder sharing, or shortcuts on the watch, or the HomePod multi-user support, whatever, and then later you gotta backtrack and say, oh no, this is coming in the spring. Like, find a balance in the features that you want to prioritize, and provide developers, even with a rough roadmap, like this is coming in September, this is coming later in the fall, this is coming next year in the spring. Like, even just that will help, and have more timely documentation with more examples. We could talk about, improving the whole Apple bug reporter system, but that's we don't have another 2 hours to talk about that. But I think the primary idea would be it's gotta be a roadmap. It doesn't, as much as Apple appreciates its culture of secrecy, it's gotta be the opposite of secrecy. It has to be a roadmap. It has to be a series of steps for developers to know, when can I build a feature that takes advantage of this API? When should I expect this functionality to become possible for me. Because otherwise you leaving developers hanging for the whole summer in hope that, maybe this feature is coming, maybe not, I don't know. That cannot, that's not sustainable, and it's not a healthy environment for developer community, I think.
Yeah, agreed. Well, we'll see what happens. I hope that Apple is using this cycle to really consider what it should do in the future. Mm-hmm. Because even if it may not be the worst cycle ever, it seems like it is the loudest cycle in terms of bugs. And in a way that's more important, right? If more people are noticing and complaining, even if technically there are fewer crashes across the systems, and Apple can look at all that, the feelings in the community are so strong this year that may override any hard empirical data. Yeah. All right. We are going to talk a little bit about Apple TV Plus to wind this out, but let me tell you about our final sponsor. That is Away. Away creates thoughtful products designed to change how you see the world. They started with the perfect suitcase, and now they offer a range of essentials that solve real travel problems. Their luggage is loaded with features. For example, the Away carry-on, which comes in an array of colors, 2 sizes, and 2 materials, is lightweight, durable, and made to last for a lifetime of travel. It has a 100-day trial, so you can try it and out on the road, travel with it. And it comes with a limited lifetime warranty. So if you have an issue, they'll fix or replace your bag if it ever gets damaged. Because, when you're out on the road, you're getting on planes and trains and buses and boats, things happen, and Away has your back. They also have the bigger carry-on, which is sized up to make the most of that overhead bin. And Away suitcases, like I said, are designed to last a lifetime. You get a 100-day trial on everything, plus free shipping within the US, Europe, and Australia. I have the Away carry-on and also the large suitcase. Anytime I travel, I'm using one or both of them. And those free spinning 4 wheels at the bottom make it really easy to navigate airports, mass transit, and more. So you can get around quickly without, your bag tipping over or being frustrating to use. It just glides with you wherever you need to go. So go check them out. And for $20 off a suitcase, visit awaytravel.com/connected. and use the promo code CONNECTED during checkout. That's awaytravel.com/connected and the promo code CONNECTED at checkout for $20 off a suitcase. Our thanks to Away for their support of this show and Relay FM. So I want to talk about Apple TV Plus, the content, but before we get there, I want to talk about Apple TV, the app, like the service level. We've heard a bunch from listeners about hiccup streaming. For Mike, Apple TV said that he couldn't watch anything in his country, even though Apple TV Plus is available in the UK. I've had issues where pausing something on the Apple TV, streaming from TV Plus, will kick me out to the home screen. Like it won't remember where I paused it. Have you had any issues like this?
Fortunately, nope.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm one of the lucky ones, I guess.
Are you watching on an Apple TV hardware
4K,
unit?
yes.
The names are ridiculous.
The Apple TV box, the Apple TV 4K is where I'm watching Apple TV Plus content with the TV app. Yes. I know the names are questionable.
Confusing.
Yes.
Yeah. I saw a post that by Dustin Curtis about the names. I'll put that in the show notes. Just go read that. It's really funny.
Yeah, I know that it makes, I guess it makes some sort of sense in its own twisted logic that it's an Apple TV box and there's an Apple TV app and the service is Apple TV Plus. But when you spell it out together, it is funny and it is confusing. Maybe there should be different names for the different products.
I'm using the Apple TV, the 1080 version.
Okay.
I don't have a 4K television, and I have not experienced TV Plus on, a Roku or, Samsung TV or anything else. I'd be curious to hear from listeners if you are using it on third-party hardware, how that's been. So let us know. I'd love to hear that, and maybe we can talk about that next week.
I can actually try that. But I have a Samsung television with the Apple TV app.
Oh, yeah.
So I should
follow up.
I should try that.
Let us know.
I will follow up.
I mean, hopefully It's exactly the same experience, but with a better remote.
Should be this. Well, the remote of this Samsung TV is not good, man. Not good.
Pretty bad.
Yeah, but no issues for me so far. I've only watched on the Apple TV, so I don't watch TV shows on my phone. Sometimes watch them on my iPad, but not this time.
So let's talk about the shows that we have seen. And I'm going to say at this point that we may spoil something about these shows. So be warned that we're going to fire the spoiler horn borrowed from our friend Jason. And after that, you're on your own if we spoil a show. We're going to try not to, but it's probably inevitable. So that's just how it is. So what have you seen so far?
So I'm all caught up on the 3 episodes of the morning show, and I watched the first episode of For All Mankind last night. I still have to watch C. So
I've only seen For All Mankind. I saw all 3 episodes.
Okay.
Mary wanted to watch the morning show with me, and we haven't had an evening to get started on that. But let's start with the morning show, because in a way, that seems like the flagship show. Like that's the one that Apple, it's got the biggest star power. It's the one that they seem to be pushing the hardest at this point. What do you think about it so far?
I came into the show very underwhelmed by the reviews, and I've been pleasantly surprised. I think it's a good show. I think it's an excellent cast. I think it's a good story. It has captivated me in a way that I was not expecting it to do, and I'm eagerly anticipating the next episode. I think it's a good story. It's the kind of story that is very much it is a contemporary story about many kinds of issues, like women in the workplace, specifically, Jennifer Aniston, she plays the host of a morning show in America, this fictional, I think it's called TDA network. And it's the story of the consequences of the Me Too movement. And the consequences on both sides of the story. The person, the man that is accused of abusing women in the workplace, which is played by I'm terrible with names. Steve Carell. Yes,
Steve Carell.
And his colleagues at the network. And I think it's not, when I say both sides, it's not the kind of story that tries to argue in favor of both sides. Thankfully, at least based on what I've seen so far, I think it's the show tries to explain what happens on both sides, and so we see in the first 3 episodes how I should say I never remember character names. So the character played by Steve Carell, how he deals with being fired from the network, and sort of and there's this idea of cancel culture that some people talk about, like how suddenly his career after 15 years at the network, being in everybody's homes in the morning with the morning show, it becomes the subject of this all of these accusations, and I think it's really well done. I think it's a good story. It's very much modern and very much relatable. It's based on actual facts that actually happened, specifically in the United States. I saw a scene showing how, and I think this was based on a story from a guy that was fired from ABC, maybe, how this man, had a button installed at their desk to close the door remotely. And
yeah, it was NBC, I think. Okay. But yeah, a truly horrific story.
Yes. And
truly horrific.
And the show has a call out to that, showing how one of these desks had a button installed to close the door. So it's very much a modern story, and I think so far it does a good job of showing, because we see these stories from we hear about it on Twitter, we see it on the news. This show wants to show you what it's like in the inside of a TV network that has to deal with the consequences of all this. And I mean, I think it's well done. It's not a funny story, right? I think it's
right. It's serious.
It's a serious story, but I think it's a captivating one, and it's well done.
Mm-hmm.
And the actors, like the cast, is excellent. I think Jennifer Aniston does an excellent job. Steve Carell does, and Reese Witherspoon as well. I love her character. Like she plays this local news TV reporter that suddenly is thrown into the spotlight of national television. I'm on the hook for the next episode. Like, I want to see what happens. I want to see what the story is like. I think it's well done. I honestly don't understand what, and this is often the case for me for TV shows and movies. I don't see what the issues from the early reviews were. I think it's a good show.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's well done. I want to see what it ends up being.
Yeah, the reviews are so interesting. I mean, I think we spoke about them on the show a couple of weeks ago. Like, it was a very cool reception from sort of the regular reviewer people. But the reality is people like all sorts of different types of shows, and Apple is perfectly capable of making good television just like they're perfectly capable of making bad television. And my sense is that maybe they don't have anything spectacular yet. Like, I don't know if there's a single show that you have to sign up for this to watch, right? Like with Netflix has had that a couple of times. Like, oh my gosh, everyone is watching this. Everyone is talking about it, right? Or HBO or AMC. I don't think Apple TV Plus has that yet, but it seems like their shows are all, at least for the most part, pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if they have like a real clunker yet. Maybe C. I think people seem upset about that one, but I haven't watched any of that yet.
Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
I am excited for the morning show. I think for the reasons that you talked about, it's a very interesting topic to have a show about, especially right now where it's still very much part of our culture. And you know, that it is a show about a current event, and that's always really interesting. And again, the cast, I mean, you couldn't ask for a stronger cast really for television. Jennifer Aniston coming back to television for the first time, that's huge, right? And I'm excited to see what that's like. I'm excited to see Steve Carell in a serious role because I know him best as a comedic actor, right? Through things like The Office.
Right.
So I am excited about that. I've watched all 3 episodes of For All Mankind. Okay. We spoke about it on Liftoff yesterday, but we did not spoil anything there. But the premise of the show is that right before Apollo 11, the Soviet Union beats America to the moon. Which
is such a good premise. I mean,
it's so
good.
I
love the idea. Like, just a single event.
It's so good. And then they follow it up. So Apollo 11 goes, that doesn't, so it diverges from real history very quickly, obviously. Apollo 11 goes, but is almost a disaster. And then before Apollo 12, the Russians put the first woman on the moon, which in real life has yet to happen. The only astronauts on the moon were men from America. Artemis, I'm on a space tangent now. Artemis is NASA's program to put people back on the moon in the 2020s. They say that the first mission will have a woman aboard. There'll be a woman on the moon. So the show very quickly becomes comes from, oh my gosh, Russia beat America, to now President Nixon wants women in the astronaut corps, and where episode 3 ends off is that women are training to become astronauts.
So can you tell me if if the Nixon tapes, like the conversations that you hear, at least in the first episode, those are not real, right? They're okay.
No, but I think they did a really good job at using the tapes,
right,
to like share what Nixon is thinking, because Nixon recorded everything that came out in Watergate.
Right,
so like it's a fun way to get Nixon worked in.
Yeah. Okay.
And I mean, there's obviously a lot of historical footage. In fact, there are several shots across the 3 episodes that the show is 16:9 or 16:10 or whatever. It's widescreen. But of course, back in the day, everything was 4:3. And they have classic footage of Apollo hardware in 4:3. And they go back to that, so that they dip in and out of like historical video, which is fun. And they don't clean it up. It looks historic. So they are winking to the fact that it's a period piece, but not shot into period, right? Like there's that sort of meta level to it. But I enjoy the show, and I'm a space nerd, so I'm predisposed to liking this. But I think it's a really interesting premise, that to take something we all know really well and just stick a fork right in its eye and say, okay, what we grew up knowing, what happened in this world, that didn't happen at all. And it took this radical departure. And I would imagine, Jason and I spoke about this, as For All Mankind goes forward, it will depart from reality more and more, right?
Yeah.
Like, like the women in the astronaut training, like that didn't happen in the 60s. Really, it happened for Mercury, and there actually was a historic women's astronaut training program, and that is referenced in the show. And some of those women are characters in the show now, so like they tie it to what was there, but they are going to increasingly depart from the timeline. And I'm really excited to see where that goes, because fiction in a setting that is historic that's a really interesting sort of genre for me. Things like Man of the High Castle kind of do the same thing, right? Like it's historic, but then they turn and wink at the camera. You're like, this is not the history that we know. And I just love those sort of stories. And so I like For All Mankind. The acting is pretty good. There are a couple of places where it feels a little thin, that some of the characters responding to things feel a little off, but I'm willing to write that off as it's the first couple of episodes. And like most shows get better further into their first season, right? That's almost universal. I mean, there are very few shows I can think of where the best episodes are episodes 1, 2, and 3, right? Like, and so I'm like you, I'm excited for when episode 4 comes out on Friday, and I'll be watching it this weekend, and I'm a fan so far.
Anything that is based on chaos theory and the butterfly effect, the idea of changing a single condition at the beginning and then having wildly different results at the end. I'm all in for that kind of stuff. I love the idea. So I think I saw somewhere that Ronald Moore, what's the name of the creator of For All Mankind? Yeah,
Ron Moore.
He has like multiple seasons planned in his mind, and the idea would be to like jump back to like multiple decades in the future to see like the consequences of this single event, Russia putting a man on the moon first, like how it changed mankind for decades to come. So that idea of like a single condition at the beginning, how it can affect history throughout the decades, that's an awesome concept. And I'm in. I want to see what it's like. I want to see what happens.
Yeah. So all in all, I think I think the start is totally fine. TV Plus is free for effectively everybody at this point. Like, I mean, if you've bought something in the last however long it is, like I would imagine most people are watching it for free for the next year. And so for that, I'm not paying $10 a month at this point. Then I'm fine with it being a little slow. I'm fine with there not being a ton of options. There's a lot more coming. There have been stories this week. Apple released the trailers for their first couple of movies, including one called The Banker that looks really, really good. And those are going to be in movie theaters and then streaming on Apple TV Plus, which is something that Netflix and others have played with. And several years ago, there was actually a big dust up with Netflix trying to do this, and a bunch of industry people being really upset about that. But Apple's going to do it. And so I think the best is yet to come with TV Plus. But I think what's here is a pretty solid start. It's not amazing, but it's definitely not as dire as it seemed like it was going to be based on initial reviews.
Yes. If
you want to find links to the stuff we spoke about, head over to the website relay.fm/connected/268. While you're there, you can get in touch with us. You can drop us an email with feedback or follow-up. And again, if you're using TV Plus on a non-Apple TV hardware, I actually honestly want to know how that is. So please let us know. You can do that on Twitter as well. You can find Federico there as Viticci, Viticci, and he is the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net. Mike was away this week, but you can follow him on Twitter as IMYKE. And I would say for Mike to know that he was missed, because he is missed. I miss Mike when he's not here. What should people send him, Federico? Do you have any ideas?
What should people send Mike?
You send Mike a tweet, IMYKE, with your favorite holiday meal. So wherever you are in the world, it's very good. It can be Thanksgiving, Christmas, anything. Your favorite holiday meal. Let's get Mike in the holiday spirit.
Yes.
Sounds good. You can find me on Twitter as ISMH and my work at 512pixels.net. I'd like to thank my wonderful wife, Mary, for joining you earlier in the show. I have not heard that yet. Yeah. As I'm saying this, I will hear it in the edit.
You're going to like it.
But I'm excited to hear that. So thank you to her for stepping in this week as the headphone tester in the family. There's headphones everywhere, Federico. She's just testing things all over the place. I'd like to thank our sponsors this week, Moo, FreshBooks, Hover, and Away. And until next time, buddy, say goodbye.
Arrivederci.
Adios.